Hello guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel. Do you know that before you build a powerful dashboard, there is a secret sauce, the model behind it? In this tutorial, we are not building visuals, we are going under the hood and uncovering data modeling. But before we dive in, I would like you to understand that data modeling is as important as building a beautiful dashboard, and it's also as important as understanding your table. Why? Because the table is at the center of your dashboard and data modeling. Data modeling cannot exist without a table, and a dashboard cannot also exist without a table. Now, we are going to be showing you how you can understand and create relationships between your table by performing a thorough data modeling. So this tutorial will be divided into two. We will have the theoretical phase where we'll be introducing data modeling. So if you're ready to learn how to clean data like a pro using the Power Query editor, and also how to build a rock solid data model that turns raw numbers into decision magic, then this tutorial is for you. So are you ready to dive in? Don't forget to hit the like button, tap subscribe and share. Understanding a table. Everything about data modeling revolves around a table. Data modeling exists because we actually have a table. Without a table, there will be no need for performing data modeling. So we have to understand what a table is. Now, what is a table? A table is simply our CSV file. Now, a table has different columns and rows. If you take a look at this diagram we have here, this is actually a table where we have the sales, the products, the cost of goods sold, and the segments. So these are called the columns, and these are called the rows. You must have seen a table severally, like a CSV file, also an Excel document. All those things are types of a table. Now, what is data modeling? Let's say we have these four different columns here, where we have the sales, the customer, the country, and the product. Now, these tables are actually linked with this arrow. These tables are linked with this arrow, showing that there is a relationship existing between these four tables. Now, this is what data modeling is all about. When we are talking about data modeling, we are simply trying to build a brain for our data. So Power BI will actually understand how our data are related. This will enable us have a smooth analysis. Now, the word data modeling is simple and it is easy to understand. When we are talking about data modeling, we are simply trying to connect these three tables, these four tables together. So when we are doing data modeling, all we are simply trying to do is connecting these three tables together, these four tables together. We are trying to create a relationship between these four tables together. So we will know how these tables are actually interconnected or how they are related. Now, in a layman way, we can simply try to create a relationship between these four tables. We can simply say a customer makes a purchase from the company. That means a sale was made to this customer. And for a customer to make a sale to and for a customer to make a purchase, there must be a product, right? And for a product to be delivered to a customer, there must be a location. This is where the country comes in. Now, as you can see, we have logically created a relationship between these four tables. But now, when it comes to data modeling in Power BI, the way relationships are being created between tables is by using what is called key. Now, without a key, there is no way a relationship can be created between these four tables. Now, in Power BI data modeling, for us to be able to create a relationship between these four data, between these four columns or these four tables, they must be sharing a unique column, which is called the key. As we move along, we'll come to understand what a key actually means. Now, let's talk about what is relationship. What is a relationship? Now, when you look at these two tables, you will see that we have the sales table and we have the customers table. Now, I want you to take a look at these both tables thoroughly and ask yourself, what is common between these two tables? Good. You must have gotten it correctly. What is common between these two tables is the customer ID. Now, when you see this arrow here, you will see that this arrow is connecting this customers table and this sales table. The thing we need to know is that this customers table and sales table, they are able to create a relationship because of the existence of this particular unique column that is shared. Now, had it been there is no customer ID in the first column, there won't be creating a relationship will not be possible between these two tables. Now, in Power BI data modeling, for a table to be connected, there must be a relationship between them. And the relationship between them is in existence because of the key, which is in this presence now, is the customer ID. So a relationship is simply the process of connecting two or more tables using a common column, like the customer ID that we have here, for example. Now, this relationship that we would create or we have created here using the customer ID will help Power BI to know how the data is related. Now, as you can see here, we have this customer ID here. And in the sales table, we also have it here. Now, in PI, that is what we call the primary key and the foreign key. We will explain that as we move ahead. But what you need to know is that in this customer table, the customer ID is the primary key, while in the sales table, the customer ID is a foreign key. One thing you need to understand about this customer ID or a primary key or field is that no two customers can have the same unique ID. Now, as you can see, we have 001, 002, 003, 004. No two customers can have the same customer ID. It is not possible. The customer ID must always be different for each customer. Now, let's understand keys. When you look at these tables we have, here we have the sales table, we have the customers table, and we have the products table. Now, there is an arrow connecting these three tables together. But I want you to also look at these tables thoroughly. You see that we have something that is common between these three tables, which is also the customer ID. Now, one thing you need to understand is that in the customer table, this customer ID is called the primary key because it originally belongs to the customer table. Now, when we are talking about customer table, the customer ID is simply the unique identifier for each customer. For example, let's say the company is actually running a promo and every customer is actually asked to form a queue. Every customer is asked to form a queue. And anytime they hear their ID, they can come forward and actually pick up their promo package. Now, in this queue, no two customers can have the same customer ID. The customer ID will differ for each customer. Now, when they call 001, customer 001 will simply walk down to pick up his or her package. Customer 02 will simply walk down to pick up his or her package. So no two customers can have the same customer ID because this customer ID is a unique identifier for the customers. Now, this customer ID is the primary key in this customer table because it originally belongs to this particular table. How does it belong to this particular table? Now, this is the customer's table, and every information here should be pertaining to the customer. We cannot have an information pertaining to products in the customer table. For example, in the customer table, we cannot have product name. As you can see, the product name is under the product table. So it means that the only information we have here are the customer ID, customer name, customer location, customer marital status, customer education level, and so forth and so forth. So every information in this customer table must directly be related to the customer. So in this customer table, this customer ID is the primary key because it originally belongs to this customer table. But let's take a look at the product table. When we come over to the product table now, we also see that we have a customer ID here. Now, the question you should ask yourself is, does this customer ID column originally belong to the product table? If your answer is no, then you are correct. If your answer is yes, then you should go back to our previous slides to actually get an understanding of what we are talking about. Now, in this product table, the customer ID is a foreign key. Why is it a foreign key? Because it is a key that is actually existing in another table that is actually referring to the primary key in a different table. Now, this is a different table, which is the customer table. But this customer ID is in this product table. And because of the existence of this particular customer ID, it is linking these two tables together, meaning it is forming a relationship between these two tables together. Now, let's analyze that relationship better. Now, when we look at 001, we can simply say the customer that actually bought an iPhone is Alice because Alice is the customer with the customer ID 001. We can say the customer that bought the Samsung phone is 002, which is Israel because Israel is the customer with the customer ID 002. Now, as you can see, a relationship is existing between these two tables because of what? Customer ID. Now, if this customer ID is eliminated from this product table, there won't be a relationship or anything connecting these two tables together. And as such, you cannot actually create a relationship between these two tables in Power BI. Now, what am I trying to say? For us to be able to create a relationship between two tables in Power BI, and for us to perform data modeling in Power BI, the tables must be interconnected or linked using a primary key. Now, when there is no column that is unique to both tables, there is no way a relationship can exist. Now, let's take a look at cells. Now, when you look at cells, you will find that we also have the customer ID here, which is also a foreign key in the sales table. Now, let's go back to product table. Let's say, for example, we have another column here, and let's name it the product ID. Now, let's say we have another column, and this column is called the product ID. One thing you need to know that in this product table, this product ID column becomes the primary key. Now, have now let's say in this sales table, we also have a column, and this column is called the product ID. In this text table, this product ID becomes a foreign key. Why it is primary key in the product table because it initially belongs to this particular table, but in the sales table, it will become a foreign key because it is linked this product table and the sales table together. Now, here we said a primary key is a unique identifier for each row in a table, while a foreign key is a column in another table that refers to the primary key in a different table. This column links back the table to the table that owns the primary key. Just as this customer ID is linking this table back to this customer's table. Let's move ahead. Now, fact table and dim tables. Dim tables is also called dimensional table. Now, when we are talking about a fact table, we are talking about the numbers that we want to analyze. For example, our gross sales, our units sold, our sales, our manufacturing costs, etc. But when we are talking about the dimensional tables, we are talking about the details describing those numbers that we want to analyze. So one thing you need to understand is that the fact table stores measurable and quantitative data. In other words, we can simply say that the fact table stores facts. While on the other hand, the dim of dimension table stores descriptive information about the fact table. Now, let's take a look at this diagram we have here. Now, when you look at this, we have the discount band where we have the high, low, medium. We have the products where we have the iPhone, Samsung, and Xiaomi. Then we have the country where we have the USA, Canada, and Nigeria. And we also have segments where we have the East, West, North, and South. Now, this particular table here is called the fact table because it is holding the numerical of this particular data. But the dimension table are called the dim table for short because they are holding descriptive information on this fact table. Now, this discount band is telling us that the discounts can be high, low, or medium. This product dimension is telling us that we have iPhone, Samsung, and Xiaomi. The country dimension is telling us that we have USA, Canada, Nigeria. And while the segments dimension is telling us that we have East, West, North. Now, we can simply say the table holds the numerical fact about a report, while the dimensional tables holds the descriptive information about a report. Let's move ahead. Now, when you look at this diagram, you can see that this is actually having a style-like shape. And this is why it is called a star schema. Now, when you look at this diagram also, you will see that we have a fact table that is centralized. But when you look at the right hand and the left hand side, you can see that we have multiple dimensional tables. Now, a star schema is a type of database schema that is used for data modeling. Now, one thing you need to understand about the star schema is that it organizes data into one central fact table and multiple dimensional tables. Like we mentioned, the fact table contains the measurable and quantitative data, like our sales, total sales, cost of goods sold, etc. While the dimensional tables contains descriptive attributes like product, location, etc. Now, the reason why this is called a star schema is because when you look at it thoroughly, you will see that it resembles a star, with the fact table being at the center and the dimensional table hovering by the right and by the left hand side. Now, We also have healthy database schema that can be used for data modeling. But one thing you need to understand is that this star schema is the most used, the most popular, the most common, and the most easy to use. But we other database schema, like we have the snowflake schema, we have the galaxy schema, and we also have the star flag schema. But like I mentioned, the star schema is the top most used for data modeling in Power BI. Now let's talk about cardinality. What is cardinality in Power BI? Now we talked about relationship, and we mentioned that relationship is all about connecting two or more tables together using a unique column or a unique identifier that that exists between each of the tables. Now, cardinality tries to tell us the type of relationship that exists between the two tables based on how values in related tables or related columns match. Now, for short, we can simply tell that cardinality helps us to understand the type of relationship existing between two or more tables in a relationship. Now, we have various type of cardinality, where we have the one to many cardinality, which is the most common in data modeling Power BI. We also have the many to one relationship. We have the many to many and the one to one. Now, let's look at the tips we should actually know before going ahead to perform our data modeling. The number one important tip is we should make sure that we use the Power Query Editor to clean our data sets thoroughly. In the practical aspect of this tutorial, we are going to see how we use Power Query Editor to actually clean our data sets thoroughly. Now, when in your Power BI, when you finish cleaning your data sets, you will see that Power BI automatically tries to create a relationship between them. But you must ensure to always double check because the relationship automatically created by Power BI can be wrong sometimes. Now, another thing you should note is always create a date table for time intelligence analysis in a situation where you have the data set that has dates in it. So in the practical aspect of this tutorial, you'll be seeing how that can be done. So this is our Power BI, right? So in our last video, the last tutorial we uploaded, we actually did a thorough data cleaning on this data set. So like we mentioned in the Power BI dashboard we are building, we said that we are going to upload a different tutorial on data modeling. So we have already performed a thorough data cleaning that is quite beginner friendly. So if you know this particular data cleaning we are going to be performing here will be too fast for you, or you don't totally understand what we are doing here, I will actually suggest you go back to the tutorial we uploaded on the dashboard building to actually go through the parts where we did the data cleaning on our Power Query editor, because that part was beginner friendly, it was slow, and it was quite understandable compared to this one that will be a bit fast. So what we just have to do is go to get our data, then our CSV, financials, then we open this up. So we transform data. So it opens up in our Power Query editor. So like I said, you can always go back to the other video if you don't understand what we are doing here. Okay, so we just have to click on our unit sold and right click all the way down to sales cost of goods sold. Then we can simply replace values. First of all, let's start by replacing the dollar dash with 0. Then we can replace dollar, dollar with nothing. Then we can also replace comma with nothing. Then go ahead and change data type to decimal. Now for profit, we can simply replace dash with 0. We can also replace that line. I don't know what happened there, but I didn't know what I pressed, so it's kind of. So let's go ahead and replace dollar with nothing. Then we can replace comma with nothing. Then we can replace our opening brackets with nothing. And we also replace our closing bracket with nothing. Then we can go ahead and change type to decimal. Okay, we are having some errors, so let's go ahead and undo this. Now let's go ahead and replace dash with 0. Let's go ahead and change type again to decimal. And this works. So we can leave everything with as so we can simply close and apply. So like I mentioned, if this was too fast for you and you did not really understand what we did here, please, I would have advised that you go back to our tutorial on the dashboard building, because this was the same data set we used for that particular tutorial. Then this is our data where we perform our data modeling. Now, because of the setting of my Power BI did not automatically create relationships for my table, because I actually turned that off for the sake of this tutorial. But on a normal basis, once you finish doing your data cleaning and you load it, Power BI tries to automatically create relationships, to know relationships and create relationships between your table. But in this situation, it did not do anything because of my settings. Now, what we have to do is go ahead and create these relationships ourselves. Now, to do that, the first thing we have to do is, now when you take a look at this, when we were doing our theoretical introduction parts, we talked about the facts table and the dim tables. Now, this is going to be our facts tables, because this is holding our numerical or quantitative columns. So this is going to be our facts table. Now, what we have to do is go ahead and create our dim tables. So it is safe to say that our fact tables are at our numerical columns, while our dim tables are our categorical columns. Now, when you take a look at this, what you should ask yourself is, what are the categorical columns that we have in this table? Now, when you take a look at it, you see that we have our country categorical column that gives us more descriptive information on location. We also have our segments categorical column that also gives us more information on how many segments that the company has. Now let's go up. We also have our product column, which gives more information on the products. And we also have our discount brand column, which gives more information on the discount. Now, what we are going to do, these columns we have mentioned is going to be our dim tables. That means our dimension tables. While the other ones are going in this table is going to be standing in is our facts table. Now, to create our dimension tables or our dim tables, what we have to do is we have to go back to our report. Then we click on modeling. Then when you look at here, you will look at create a new measures. Create new measure. Now, what you need to know is that creating a new measure is different from creating a new column or a new table. Sorry, some people mistake it. Now, we are not, when you want to create a new measure, you're trying to calculate maybe your KPIs. For example, if you want to calculate your total sales or your cost of goods sold, this is when you create new measure. But in this situation, we are trying to create our dimensional tables. So we are not going to be making use of new measure. Instead, we are going to be making use of write a DAX expression to create a new table. Now, what we have to do is we click here. So remember we said we are going to be creating four different view tables, which is our discount band, our dim country, our dim segment, and our dim product. Now let's start with our dim country. Now to create our dim country, we say listings, select column. Now financials, which is our data, financials, okay. Then what is the name of the dim dimension we are creating? We said is country, okay. Then we have to select it in our financials. So we look for country, okay, then we'll click it, then we close this. Now, as you can see, we have successfully created our dream country. Now, just remember that it's actually the same thing for other dimensions. The only thing we just have to change is the name and the name here, and also the column when selecting it. So every other thing is the same. Now, to actually save time, we can simply copy this here and click OK here. Okay. Then again, we can still go ahead and create another table. So what we have to do is paste this. Then let's call this. So let's call this Vim product. And then we call this products. We can simply go here and select, let's say financials. Then we have to look for products. Then we OK this. Okay. Now the same thing, we simply go to, so let's call this Zim discount bound. So this should be equals to distinct. Select columns, then financials, then comma, discounts. Okay, sorry. Discount bands, discount band, then financials. We look for discount band, then Okay, that's. Then we also go ahead to create for segments. So we call it dims underscore segments. So this should be equals to distance. Then select columns. Then financials. Then this should be discounts dim segment, sorry. Dim underscore segments and financials segments. Process, then we can okay this. Now, as you can see, we have successfully created our dim or our dimensions. So what we have to do is let's go to model and see what we have now. Now, when you go to model, you see that these are the dimensions we have actually created. So as you can see, we have created the dim country, we have created the dim product, we have created the dim discount bound, and we have created the dim segment, right? Now we can simply go ahead and rearrange this by moving it, also making it smaller and moving it, right? You can also decide to make this smaller and you move it. Like let's say we move this here, then we can also move this here, right? Then you can also decide to move this also, or we can decide to, sorry, we can decide to, we'll fix that, but we can just decide to move this, right? Okay. Then we can decide to also move this, then we can decide to move this, then we can decide to move our facts table, right? Then we can decide to move this here, then we can decide to move this here, then we can also decide to move this here, then we can decide to move this here, okay? Now we can decide to make this a bit bigger, then we can also decide to make this a bit bigger, right? Make this a bit bigger, then let's bring this down a bit. Now we can decide to make our facts table a bit bigger. That's what we want to do. So we can decide to make our facts table a bit bigger and move it over here, right? Now we can decide to take this a bit up, right? Then we can decide to reduce this also, or maybe let's just make this a bit larger. Then okay, then let's take this down a bit, right? Now we have successfully created our dim tables, okay? But now there is another thing I want us to do, and that is to create our date table. Now remember in doing our theoretical section, I told you that in a situation where we have dates and we want to perform time intelligence analysis, OY analysis, and the rest of them, we have to create our date table, right? Now, to do that, what we have to do is we simply go ahead to our reports, right? Then we also go to create new table, and we call this our date table, and this should be equals to, so we simply go ahead and OK this. So now we have simply created our dates table. Now when we go to our model, we'll also find it there. Okay, so we'll also find our dates table there. So we can simply go ahead and move this down. Go ahead and increase this. Increase this. So it really doesn't matter the size you get. So the size is actually your choice. So whichever size you want to leave it is actually your choice. So what matters more is the relationship. Okay. Now, this is the first step. We have successfully created our dim tables, which is our dimension tables. Now, the next thing we have to do is go ahead and create our relationship. What we do is we go here, we click on this, we drag it and drop it right on the concrete, right? Now, as you can see, a relationship has been formed. Now we do the same thing for products. We click on it, we drag it, and we drop it on products. Now that relationship has been created. Now we do the same thing for segments. We click on the segments, we drag it, then we drop it. Now this relationship has been created. Now the next thing we have to do is discount band. Now we click on discount band. Now you can see this relationship has been created. Now we do we do the same thing for date. We click on date, then we drop it. Now as you can see, the relationship has also been created for date. Now as you can see, we have successfully created our relationship. Now, this is called one-to-many relationship. Because as you can see, one country is mapping to the various columns in this. The same thing for this, the same thing for this, the same thing for this. So this is called the one-to-many relationship in Power BI. Now with this, we have successfully performed our data modeling. So this is actually what data modeling is all about, nothing too serious. So to actually perform a good data modeling, your attention should actually be on performing a thorough data cleaning. So once you've been able to successfully perform a thorough data cleaning, you will be able to perform a good data modeling. So you have performed your data cleaning using your Power Query editor, then the next thing you have to do is just know that your fact table is your numerical columns and your dim tables are your categorical columns. So all you have to do is follow the step I have showed you and create your dim tables, okay, using the DAX function I have showed you. So once you create your dim table, all you have to do is you then link your dim tables to your fact table using the step I have showed you. So now this is what we call the star schema. Now when you look at it thoroughly, you'll see that it is having the shape of a star, correct? Now this is what the star schema is. It has one fact table which is at the middle of the model, and it has several dim or dimension table which are hovering around the fact table. Now you can see that all these dimension tables are linked to this fact table. This is why we call it the one to many relationship. Now there's one last thing I always like doing, right? This is not actually necessary. You can choose to do it or you can choose to leave it. I always like coming to my fact table and hide all my dimension tables to avoid return dancing. Now, what do I mean? What I have to do, I simply come to segments and no, I go to my reports, then I come to segments, then I hide it. I don't delete, I hide. I come to my country, I hide it. I come to my product, I hide it. Then what else? I come to my discount band and I hide it. Now, this is to reduce redundancy because since I already have these tables here, there is no need having all this also. I can also come here and hide this, but most times I leave the dates on hidden. Now, when you're doing your data visualization, ensure to make use of your theme tables. That means your dimension tables instead of these columns in the financials. Thank you for coming to the end of the data modeling tutorial. Please don't forget to like and subscribe.